by saying congratulations on this album. It is an absolutely amazing debut album, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're pretty proud of it. Took a lot of work.
So, mate, for a lot of our listeners, this is probably the first time that they've ever heard of you guys. So tell us a little bit about the history of the band. How did you guys all get together in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So, Jacob, I started the band when I was in college at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. And it was just a solo project at the time because there is not a scene in that town. So released a couple demos, that kind of thing. But then when I moved out to Denver, I pretty quick put out like some Craigslist ads, that kind of thing, to start a band. And I just put out an EP. Thankfully, we got some good people. Donovan, the other guitarist, he joined first, and then soon after, Dave and on bass and drums. And then from there, we just practicing, doing a lot of blast beats. And when the pandemic hit, we really started writing this record.
That must have been really tough for you going to college in a town that didn't really have a metal scene. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was interesting because it has a huge music scene, the indie rock focused kind of. So there are a lot of great town, and I actually was able to do like some music business time classes and stuff like that. Not that it helps all that much, but it was a cool place to be. I got to intern in some doing live sound and stuff like that. But I definitely being able to jam with people on heavy stuff because that's what I really get enjoyment.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Denver scene. What's the Denver metal scene like?
Oh man, I think the Denver scene is awesome. When I moved out here, it blew my mind how many people walking around wearing metal t-shirts and stuff. I'm sure most of the listeners have heard of Blood Incantation, which is a big band at Denver right now. I mean, I think their past two records have just been awesome. So it's cool. There are a lot of smaller bands that'll do metal shows here, like the High Dive and the Squire and Herdway. So I've gotten a chance to see some really cool bands, all our settings, and we played one show like right before the pandemic hit, and it was pretty great.
Awesome.
Good crowd.
So that's a pretty big step that you took, going from being a solo project into getting band members to join. When you were looking for band members, you mentioned you used Craigslist, but what were you looking for in those members, and how did you know when you met the right members to join you on your project?
Yeah, so it was a little tough putting myself out there in that way because I was at that point very attached to the sound that I was starting to create with this project. So I didn't want it to kind of shift and become a whole new band. So I was pretty upfront when talking with the guy. This was going to still be the same band. We were going to be playing, the music that I wrote. But then as time went on, their influences are more than welcome. Donovan actually wrote this record, so it was a pretty good 50-50 split. But yeah, really I just wanted to make sure that they were into this kind of music. They had to enjoy this type of music, black metal and death metal. And so we just talk about bands that we like all the time, that we're always sharing good music with her. And that's really what I was looking for with people.
Awesome.
For the type of music we're
playing. So tell us a little bit about that writing process. You mentioned that the writing process for this album really kicked off when the pandemic started. Tell us a little bit about that writing process. What were you guys hoping to try and achieve with this album?
So we were really attached to this idea of keep blackened sound, but not being like a standard blackened death metal band. I think that we like the tone, like the riffs a lot, but sometimes we want to throw some dissonant death metal kind of riffs. That's a lot of Donovan's influence there. And so as we were kind of crafting the record, we wanted to make sure that it had a cohesive sound. And that was a big focus for us. As we wrote the songs, we would share the demos with each other. kind of rearrange things, and I would pull in production projects to make sure that everything was perfect before we even start recording.
Yeah. And was there certain things that were inspiring the lyrics and things like that when you were sitting down to write as well?
For sure. So I definitely handle all of the lyric writing myself, but similar views within the band that I wanted to capture. A lot kind of like the psychedelic nature of our reality. There's a lot of different forms of consciousness and perspective there, and we really wanted to capture the connection between the mind, nature, and the universe with these lyrics. I didn't want it to be something strictly satanic or anything like that, because in that kind of spiritualism, it's not what I want the focus of the band to be. Be more otherworldly.
That's a pretty deep subject to get into. How did you find those writing sessions for you? Did you find that the lyrics came quite easily, or was it kind of like a prolonged time to get those lyrics the way that you wanted them to be?
I usually write the lyrics very quickly, stream of consciousness style, and just when I'm feeling inspired, I'll just write lyrics, and I don't try to put them to music at that point in time. What I'll do from there is pick and choose and rearrange and edit to make them fit as actual song lyrics. But it's not a long process. I do think deeply about them.
Yeah. And what about the recording process? Because I know for a lot of bands here, we had a really, really long lockdown for the pandemic. In fact, we've gone back into lockdown now. A lot of bands couldn't actually get together to record. How did you guys go about recording the album?
Yeah, so we were just always, like, as the pandemic was hitting, we were all in the same space together. I think one of us got sick before we even knew a pandemic happening. And so we just kind of dedicate ourselves to us for, staying in the same area, really focusing on the record. And the recording is all DIY. I did recording in our practice space. So booking a studio, that kind of thing, was not an issue because we did it ourselves.
Awesome. And what was that like, doing it all yourself? Did that actually take a lot of the pressure off that you would have had if you'd been in a studio or anything like that?
Well, I felt like there was a good bit of pressure on me to make it sound for the rest of the guys in the band, because, recording, doing it from the writing stage all the way through recording and mixing and mastering is a lot for one person. But they were pretty good about giving me feedback throughout the way.
Awesome. So how do you cope with that pressure? Like you said, that is a fair bit of pressure on you. How do you cope with that pressure?
Sometimes I have to take a step away, and it's too close to a project and you think everything sounds horrible. And so, you take a day or two off, and then I come back and the song, I'd be like, this sounds great. I like this song. I can know what we're doing. And that right there makes me...
Awesome. Well, mate, it has ended up sounding absolutely amazing. So how do you feel now that the album is out there and that people are taking a listen to it?
It's pretty surreal to hear people enjoying the album from all different parts of the world. I've never put out any music that's been this widely received. I'm grateful. I think it's awesome. As long as there's one person with the music, I'm happy.
Awesome. Matt, what's the plans now for the band? Like, is it starting to open back up there after the pandemic? Are you guys going to look to do some shows now or even tour maybe?
Yeah, that's really the hope, is that now that it's starting to open up and it's not sitting down at tables to watch, that we'll start booking some local shows. And then the plan is, in a year or so to plan a tour.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, we're going to throw this wide open to you now. Which track off your album would you like us to play on the show right now, and why did you pick that track?
Corinthian Dream Vortex. I think it's the track that I'm the most happy about. It's mid-paced. It's got some good grooves. The lyrics evoke a very intense that I had.
Awesome. Well, we're going to play that right now. And just to finish off the interview, what would you like to say to people out there who want to grab a copy of the album? And also, where can they grab a copy of the album as well?
Yeah. Check out the album. It's at ashesforthemute.bandcamp.com. You'll find it there for streaming. It's also available over Spotify. But if you want a hard copy, they're going to be taped, sold through Habilis Tapes. And there will also be CDs on the way soon, which we'll sell from the band.